Hi, this is Carla King with the Author Friendly Podcast, a consumer's guide for self-publishers in audio format.
The technology of serial publishing has existed for a long time, and I think it's something that basically every genre fiction author should be doing for all of their works.
Today I'll be talking with a co-founder of Leanpub. Leanpub's a platform that combines writing, publishing, and selling ebooks with an emphasis on in-progress or lean publishing. I've tested it, and I really like the platform for beta publishing, iterative publishing, and creating fans from early readers. We'll be talking with Len Epp, who's a co-founder of Leanpub. He's a former investment banker with a doctorate in English literature. Len enjoys wearing the seemingly contradictory hats of resident corporate finance and literary type person at Leanpub. Leanpub is for all kinds of authors: fiction, nonfiction, technology, novelists, memoirists, short story writers, everybody. We will be talking about the in-progress, iterative, beta, and serial publishing aspects of the platform. You'll learn how to upload your book, how to sell it. There are many ways to sell on Leanpub. How to format your book. You can download your book to Mobi, EPUB, text formats, even InDesign, which is pretty awesome. We'll talk a lot about how you can do things like book promotion, create books during NaNoWriMo, and even create a course from a manuscript with Leanpub. That's just one of the new features that they launched recently. I think it's a very underused, at least in the creative nonfiction and novelist genres form, and I'd like to see more of you on it. So with that, please enjoy my conversation with Len Epp from Leanpub. Hi, Len. Welcome to the Author Friendly Podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
My pleasure. Let's start at the beginning. Leanpub was founded back in about 2010. Why was it founded, and what problem did it solve for authors?
So it was created by Peter Armstrong and Scott Patton, and they were solving a problem they'd encountered themselves. I'm more familiar with Peter's story. He'd written a computer programming book, and he'd had the experience of having a computer programming book be obsolete by the time it went through the conventional publishing process. And so what Scott and Peter decided to do was try to create a way to publish books in progress. And Peter had actually done this himself with one of his books. So he started publishing it before it was finished. And he actually built a community around the writing of the book. I think there was a code you got somehow called Rumpelstiltskin, and then that got you into this community. And what he discovered was readers really love getting something early if it's something that they need. They don't care if it's completely finished, if it's already giving them value. And they love helping you improve the quality of your book. So like if there was a bug in Peter's code, someone would point that out and you could update it right away. And so that meant that the person would feel empowered by what they'd done, because they'd improved the book both for themselves and for everyone else. And it was on the back of that experience that Peter and Scott decided to eventually create Leanpub, which was originally presented as a way to turn blogs into books, in addition to the lean publishing process. And now we focus mostly on enabling authors to use the lean publishing process to get their books out while they're writing them, in addition, of course, to publishing, completely finished books.
Sure. So why don't we just go over the process of getting a book onto Leanpub?
So we've adapted over time to the various different needs that authors have. Authors love their processes. We're opinionated, and we, try to gently guide people towards what we believe are the best ones. But it's just so subjective. It's so contingent upon the particular project that you're working on. If you're an author and you're collaborating with other people, you might already have an established process. So over time, we've added different, what we call writing modes to Leanpub. One writing mode allows you to upload a Word document that you've been working on, and then it converts it into a version that you can use with our internal workflow. So there's two things that can happen there. One is that it can get turned into something that you would use in our visual editor. So this is something that we've developed, which is a WYSIWYG editor, or what you see is what you get editor, so that you don't need to learn anything to use Leanpub. You can just, create chapter headings and write your text. This is specifically meant for people writing novels, things like genre fiction and romance novels and things like that, where not only are you not doing a lot of fancy formatting, but you don't want your tool to be slowed down and you don't want to be distracted yourself by all kinds of complex features.
That sounds like it'd be great for NaNoWriMo or something.
Yeah, we think it would be great for NaNoWriMo writers. The idea is to take all the distraction away and to present you with the simplest possible way of writing a book. And then you can use the powerful Leanpub features that we've developed over time, like click a button and release your new chapter, click a button and release your new edits. One thing you can do is when you publish a new version is you can email your readers and let them know. Readers will get, if they're logged into Leanpub, they'll see a little notification and they'll get the download links for the book right there. You can also use other things on Leanpub, like you can create coupons, that you can give to people as links on the internet that they can click so they can get a discount. And people love discount sales. They love to hear this coupon will work for, the first 100 people who use it can get a deal on the book in the next 24 hours, things like that. But yeah, the idea is that the entry point can be the upload of a Word document and then the use of our visual editor. If you've done a lot of formatting in your book, that's not a good idea. In Word, for example, that's probably not a good idea. And so one thing that we've developed is the ability we have a bring your own book writing mode, which isn't really a writing mode. What that lets you do is lets you use whatever process you have for creating EPUB and or PDF and or MOBI files, and then you can just upload them to our bookstore. So you can do all the formatting you want. We've got we've got one book that I think has 1 million words or something like that someone had written in Word. It's a complex guide for an exam that improves people's careers. And he didn't want to have to convert to anything. He was done making his book. And so he used the bring your own book feature to upload his book. And we've had other authors who, where not just because it's their personal predilection, but like they actually really believe in the importance of very good formatting for books that they're selling. And so they use the bring your own book feature. Another mode that we have, the sort of canonical Leanpub mode, is to write not in Word, but in plain text. And so this is something that people who are kind of technically minded are familiar with, but it's interesting. I come at it from a bit of a sort of former academic perspective, which is that if you are writing in, I don't need to go into the weeds too much here, but if you're writing in Word, the program or any program that's not plain text, that program is kind of wrapping everything you type in its own custom code. And that means that you have compatibility issues. This is not so much an issue now, but it was in the past. If the new version of the software came out, it might not be compatible with everything you've done in the previous version. This is something that archivists and librarians and historians and people who are worried about preserving text over time are really concerned about. There are also huge technical advantages to writing in plain text. And what's happening there is basically, the short version is what you're typing is not being wrapped up in a bunch of stuff. And it will be the same kind of data visible to all the things that ever look at it going forward for all time. This is why computer programs themselves are written in plain text. And so the canonical way to write Leanpub books is in plain text like that. And when you do that, we have a ton of things that you can do, like making tables. Obviously we have chapter headings and things like that. And so when you're writing that way, the interesting thing is that what you need to do is you need to actually type the formatting instruction, which might sound to some people daunting, which is one of the, or just gross, which is one of the reasons we have our visual editor, which we're very proud of. So you don't have to do any of that. But if you are interested in the idea of creating a manuscript that will, essentially kind of in a technical sense, can last forever, it's actually very easy to do this. So for example, instead of clicking a B to make something bold, you would type an asterisk or 2 asterisks before and after the thing that you want to be in bold. And then there's a ton of different features that you can do like that.
This is early desktop publishing world. I remember the first word processors did that. Is that called markup language or markdown language?
So Markdown is what they call a syntax of formatting. You can think of it as like a set of instructions for how to do this. And Markdown was made to make it way easier to make web pages. Mm-hmm. So for example, instead of having to put things in a angle bracket, quotation mark, HTTP, blah, 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 you could do things in a much simpler way, typing fewer keystrokes. And so Markdown was made for making web pages. And what Leanpub did was took that and made something called Leanpub Flavored Markdown, which was taking all those things and customizing them for making books. And we've actually now, we've been working on for a couple of years now, something called Markdown, which is meant to be this sort of next stage of evolution in that way of writing books, which we're really excited about. I should mention that when you're writing on Leanpub, you can also write in Dropbox. This is partly what enables the magical click a button thing. So you can, if you've got a Dropbox folder on your computer, you can save your work in there just like you would save your work working on your computer normally. But because the folder's shared with Leanpub over the internet, then you can just go to Leanpub and click a button, and you don't need to upload a file. You don't need to do anything other than go to Leanpub and click, create a preview and see your book in all the formats, click publish and have it available to all your users with one click. You can also use, for technical people listening, you can also use something called GitHub, which
You're going to say that. GitHub, that's going to scare everybody except for computer writers.
Yeah, and so, but the great thing is, if you don't know what it is, you can just ignore that. And if you do, you're like, holy crap, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And there are other things as well. One thing that is only recently coming sort of public knowledge as well is that you can use Leanpub to create courses now.
Oh my gosh. I want to save that for last because that is so cool. I wish I had known that just a month ago. So
okay, definitely we can save that for later. The short version is Leanpub has lots of writing modes, including ones where you don't need to learn anything, and including ones where if you've already got a sort of process, like with a service like GitHub or something like that, then we accommodate those needs as well.
That's so cool. And it's just so incredibly easy. Now, once we've written our book, we've talked about how to get the book on Leanpub, a little bit about how to sell it. But I want to just preface this by saying you can get it down onto your computer and sell it elsewhere. Like you can export your book once it's up, and once all of your beta readers and it's perfect. I mean, I can't really emphasize how important that is. And I think you guys know that and have addressed that. Get early readers reading your book, engage them, like you said, make them feel involved. This is your best marketing opportunity, isn't it? I mean, these people are going to put 5 stars on Amazon the first day your book is out. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself because once you've completed your book on Leanpub and it's perfect, then you can download it and upload it to Ingram Spark, Amazon, Smashwords, anywhere else you want, correct?
Yeah, that's right. The way I like to describe it is what Leanpub's done is it's taken that long period of time when you're working on your book and made it public rather than private. And so that means that it doesn't prevent you from, when you're finished your book, carrying out all the conventional things that a self-published author would do. It just adds opportunity to that period of time when you're writing your book, or opportunities that you can exploit during that period of time when you're writing your book that you didn't have before. So one approach that people have to using Leanpub, and we've actually had people with not just self-published, but people like have worked out deals with publishing companies, where what they do is while they're writing their book, they write it on Leanpub, they publish it in progress, they develop an audience during that window of time when you previously would not have been developing an audience, building a community of people who are excited when they get their updates. They're excited when they see an impact they might have had on the book if they made a suggestion, found a typo. People love telling you about your typos and seeing you fix them, by the way. But then when you're done, one thing you can do, for example, with these people who had publishing companies behind them, is you retire your book, as we call it, on Leanpub. So it's no longer for sale on Leanpub, and then the publisher can put it through whatever channels they like. You yourself, for example, as you said, Leanpub imposes no restrictions on you for what you can do with your book at any time. But actually, of course, some publishing services do, particularly Amazon, might say, if your book is for sale here, then it can't be for sale somewhere else, or it can't be for sale somewhere else for a lower price, things like that.
Right.
And so what you can, sort of a very normal way to use Leanpub is to use it to build an audience, get sales, and motivation, by the way, while you're working on your book. And when you're done, you retire it on Leanpub, and then you take it over to Amazon, KDP, things like that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So the nice thing too is that you can download it in a lot of different formats. EPUB, which you would upload to everybody but Amazon. Mobi for Amazon. You can download in text. And you can download it in InDesign format, which I find astounding, because most of the authors that I talk with, I want them to get professional publishing, or I want them to use an InDesign template. It's just astounding to me that you managed to create a process where you can actually get an InDesign document from this online service.
Yeah, we have an InDesign export feature. It's not the most used feature on Leanpub. So I would just like to say to anyone listening, if you come to Leanpub and you use that, one of the reasons everything else works on Leanpub is because authors come and give things a kick, and we work closely with them to bring the service up to what they need. So we're actually very proud of our InDesign export feature, and I just want to say that anyone who comes to us, that's not the part that we're the most knowledgeable about ourselves, and so we would love people to come and help us improve that for authors. And I can give you an example of a feature that we have like that, which is we also have print-ready PDF export. Yeah, with the click of a button, you can get a PDF that you can upload to things like CreateSpace, Lulu, to create print versions. And basically, you shouldn't have to do anything to the manuscript. Like you'll have to upload your own cover and stuff like that. But basically, you should be able to write your book in Leanpub and with one click, get the PDF that you need to upload to these various print services and not have to fiddle around with anything. And the reason it's that good is because we worked with authors over time on making it that good. And that's kind of something I'd like to communicate about our ethos at Leanpub is that, working with authors, and we also have the particular benefit of working with technical people, means that we improve things over time to suit the needs and requirements that people have.
Right. Amazon CreateSpace, Lulu, Ingram Spark, anywhere, your local printing company in town. Let's talk about pricing and your sliding scale, your minimum, your maximum, the opportunities for kind of maybe even crowdfunding your book.
I guess the way into explaining this is that one of the things about Leanpub is that we've conventionally paid a high royalty rate. Currently, the royalty rate is 80%, and that is higher than you will find for anything you're selling on, Amazon or iBooks, or any other service that I know of, actually, any other sort of dedicated self-publishing service that's as robust as we are. When you set your price for your book, you actually set two prices for your book on Leanpub. You set a minimum price and a suggested price. And the reason I brought up the royalty rate in advance is because in addition to showing the person the price that they're going to pay, we also show how much the author is going to get. And the reason we were led to do that was because we pay such a high royalty rate that this is like, an important way of establishing a relationship between the reader and the author. So for example, one thing we discovered was that people would take this little pricing slider that lets you choose what to pay, and they would be paying odd prices. Like I think I always get it wrong, but I think there was a price like in the old days, $11.67. And in our old royalty rate, that meant that the author was earning $10.
Oh,
so
wow.
what the customer was doing was they were deciding how much they wanted to give the author. And because the difference between what they were paying and the royalty rate was so low compared to other things, they were actually not so much concerned about what they ultimately paid. They were concerned with how much they thought they wanted to give the author. Now, the minimum price that you can set for a book is free. And then the next lowest price you can set is $4.99. We've got a long post about that decision that we made. Essentially, the idea is that, we're taking a position about what we think books should be priced at. And it's important that there's a free entry point. But the idea is that if you're selling a book for lower than $4.99, then you're basically discounting it and selling it's sort of like a promotion. And promotion should either a promotion should be free, or you should be paying a kind of meaningful price for a book. And I understand that that's not a conventional approach, but that is the position that we've taken on that. Our most successful book by revenue has a free minimum price. So people pay for books that they can get for free. They can just drag that slider to the left and get it for free, but they don't. And people often pay more than the suggested price. They'll actually be presented with this price and they'll pay more than that. For example, because they might be an early adopter of a book and buy it when it's only 10% done, they might get it for free. And they'll come back to us later and say, man, I wish I'd paid more for that book. How can I do that? And we just ask them to, buy a new copy and, archive the old one in their library. And it's really amazing when you present people with these different options and empower them at the point of purchase. It just establishes a different kind of relationship between the reader and the author than you get in a conventional kind of commercial retail process.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Now, how many people pay $500 for a book?
500. Yeah. So the maximum, you're bringing up something I left out, which is the maximum price that you can sell a book for is $500. I don't know how many $500 sales we've had, but we've had that million word book that I was talking about. I believe last I checked, it had a suggested price of $300 and a minimum price of $200. And by the way, this is for an ebook that you can buy, download, and then get a refund for with like 2 clicks within 45 days of purchase. And we've sold many, many books between 200 and 300 copies between $200 and $300.
That's astounding.
Yeah, that I should say that one of the interesting things about our experience with self-publishing is that partly because Leanpub was created by programmers and always had a little bit, until we built our visual editor, had this kind of programmery tone to it. It attracted technical books. And the thing about, which is, sort of prescriptive nonfiction, I think is the technical term in the publishing industry for things like that. And the thing about these books is that after a person reads them, they can do things like build themselves out at a higher rate for their consulting business. People make money from what they learn from Leanpub books. And so their willingness to pay is driven and what they're willing to pay for things is driven in part by that. So for example, the $300 book I was talking, the million word book I was talking about, helps you pass a Cisco systems certification, which means that you're literally going to make way more money at your job than you were before. And people want to pay for things like that. People feel like it is good to pay for things like that. People would feel unprofessional not paying for things like that. And so, this is, again, one of the things that sort of, has differentiated us in the past. We're really looking forward with our visual editor to the genre fiction world, hopefully breaking down our doors going forward. But up until this point, we've been really fortunate to work in that particular technical book space with, fast moving technologies, which is something, which is another thing that we were built to accommodate. If there's a subject matter that's changing quickly, the in progress publishing model is exactly right. And again, also another reason for the suggested minimum price variable pricing model, as we call it, is that if you're buying a self-published book that's not finished yet, we know that you're kind of doing the author a bit of a favor, unless you're desperately in need of what they're telling you, and then in which case they're doing you a favor. And by empowering readers in that situation, where what's going on is kind of unusual from a conventional sense, it really gives them a lot more comfort to jump in. So, for example, in that context, that leads me to think of one conventional process that authors use when they're publishing in progress on Leanpub is that when they first publish the book, they have a lower price than it's going to eventually have, and they announce this. So right now, you can buy the book for $4.99. When it's done, it's going to be $14.99. But if you get in early, you can get it for a cheaper price. So there's all kinds of cool things you can do like that help you promote your book in different ways on Leanpub that aren't really easily achieved on other platforms. So what Leanpub represents is this sort of blend of crowdfunding and an advance and book sales, because what happens is if you start getting some traction, if you start getting readers, then you can use that to fund your work on the book. But there is this distinct reality where, but if you're buying something on Leanpub, something real already exists for you to.
Now I think it's time to talk about that course thing that you just developed without my knowledge, because I went with another solution, and then when I was looking to invite you here, I was looking at the Leanpub site, and it's courses, which makes total sense.
Yeah, decision was made because we had some very successful authors approach us saying they wanted to build something to make courses themselves, and we were like, why don't we made the pretty big decision to go down that new path of a whole new type of product. And what this is essentially is a MOOC, or a massively open online course that you can create from a manuscript using Leanpub. And it was a natural decision for us because so many of our prescriptive nonfiction books are actually training you to do something. And so if you're an author who's writing this type of nonfiction, often what people were actually doing was they were kind of hacking their Leanpub books into courses anyway. And so what you can do now, and there's a bit of a learning curve to this, but you can actually, from a single document, generate the textbook and the course that are sold separately. And this is really important because the thing about massively open online courses that are successful, they can end up with literally millions of students around the world. Being able to quickly adapt when problems emerge, something's unclear, maybe you made a mistake and someone's like, I answered this question correctly, but it marked me as incorrect because you wrote it wrong. If you've got lots and lots of students, you want to be able to fix those problems very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so in Leanpub, if you start hearing murmurs of an issue with your course, with its many, many users, you can just open up the document, change the problem, click save, click publish on Leanpub, and within a couple minutes, the solution to that problem will be live, and it won't be a problem for any new students going forward anymore. And so the really important thing for us was to build something that scales to a successful model. And from a technical perspective, having one document that can produce the textbook and the associated course was just really cool. Nobody's used it that way yet, but because people are just using it to make the courses, but that is one of the cool things about it.
Len, have we covered everything? I just feel like there's so much to Leanpub that I didn't want to miss anything.
Yeah, the thing I would say is that people might not know this, but conventionally in the past, novels in the 19th century, at least in the West, were often published serially. Mm-hmm. And so something people often are surprised to hear is that one of the reasons the great works of the 19th century are such long books is that they were successful serials. Let's say you've got a plan, you're Dickins and you're writing the Pickwick Papers and you plan to have, write 300 pages, right? And you start publishing it and it turns into a huge hit. Well, now that book might end up being longer in the end because it's being sold chapter by chapter in magazines. Serial publishing fiction is something really easy to do on Leanpub. You can communicate with all your existing readers by emailing them when you publish a new chapter. Obviously, one thing I haven't mentioned is, people get updates for free. One of the interesting things about this is that, and especially if you're a very entrepreneurially minded author who is partly trying to find a way to make your portfolio as successful as it can be. Let's say you write a book about, one of my jokes is like you write a book about vampires and you spend 6 months writing your book about vampires and then you publish it and no one wants it. What if you'd started publishing your book about vampires after you'd finished the first chapter and by chapter 3, you realized no one was buying it? Well, then you don't abandon it, you wrap it up. But what if the book starts taking off, right? Then all of a sudden you might make it a longer book than it would have been otherwise. That doesn't exactly correspond to the weekly magazine sales thing, but what the version of that would happen on Leanpub, if that were to happen, is that you would start gathering more readers than you would have otherwise and making more sales because your book is becoming more popular. But crucially, what's happening there is that you're learning from early feedback what you should be writing about. You're learning what readers respond to as you write your book. This is what's so interesting about it, is that's an old practice. That's not a new 21st century technical, innovative practice. This is an old and established practice for how to decide what to write, how to drive a success, how to create a successful novel. So that's one thing I would say to anyone listening, is that although Leanpub represents this kind of new technology, technology doesn't just mean computers and electricity. Technology also refers to processes, and the technology of serial publishing has existed for a long time. And I think it's something that basically every genre fiction author should be doing for all of their works.
That's food for thought. I was going to ask you, was there any single piece of advice or food for thought for authors listening? That might have been it, but if you've got more, go for it.
Well, we've got one funny thing that we like to say, which is, people do often ask us, well, when should I start publishing my book? And our answer is when you're still a little embarrassed that maybe you haven't written enough yet or it's not good enough yet. If you're still a little bit embarrassed and worried about the reaction, that's when you should first publish. Because if you're comfortable, you've waited too long.
Well, thanks for that. That indeed is food for thought. So can you tell us where you are online and Facebook and any of the other socials?
Yeah, so we're at Leanpub on Twitter. I believe our Facebook is, dash Leanpub. We're at leanpub.com. And we also have a couple of podcasts that we run. One is called Front Matter, and that is where we interview Leanpub authors. And it's both a general interest and an author's podcast. So we started out, every interview starts with going in depth into the writer's life and their career. And then we talk about the subject that they're an expert in and that they've written about. So that can be anything from evolutionary psychology to molecular biology to use your imagination. And then at the end, we talk about their experience as a writer. So taking all this lived experience and this specific knowledge and then turning that into a writing experience. And then we have a publishing industry podcast called Back Matter, where I interview in the same format experts from the book publishing industry about their particular knowledge and experience of the book publishing industry and about the controversies of the day. Something that a lot of people who are getting into self-publishing might not know is that there's always lots of controversy out there. And so what I like to do is get experts like Jane Friedman and talk to them about their latest understanding of what's going on in that world.
Thanks, Len.
Yeah, well, thanks very much for having me on this interview. I really enjoyed it.
It's been fun. So that's it for now. I hope you'll listen in on the next episode of the Author Friendly Podcast. You can find the show notes at www.authorfriendly.com, and you'll also find links to places you can find me on the socials. Also, free resources like my Consumer's Guide for Self-Publishers with reviews of all the tools, services, and products you'll hear about on this podcast. And hey, if you like the podcast, I'd appreciate a quick or a detailed review on iTunes or Stitcher. It helps a lot to float the podcast to the top so more authors can find it. All that and more on authorfriendly.com and a preview of what you'll hear next week too. Signing off till then, thanks for listening.